It's good to be here and motivate each other as we continue to work on ourselves. To begin, let's each reflect on our lives for a moment. Intention 4. Don't give up. At this very moment, are you proud of who you are? Do you feel that you're everything you're capable of being at this point in your life? Or at least that you're on your way without unnecessary setbacks interfering? Or instead, are you fighting yourself in addictions or in behaviors or in mindset? Are you struggling to let go of or replace a part of yourself that won't let you grow? If so, how long have you been at war with yourself? Has it led you where you'd never imagined? Can you feel the toll it's taken on your spirit? Has it become too exhausting to challenge anymore? What good exists from admitting that I'm defeated? What hope exists when I'm at my lowest? One of the most difficult parts of our human experience is coming face to face with our deficiencies and the character that we've established, and admitting that there's a need to change for the better. That change is typically in filling a void that exists in our sense of capability, but it's more profoundly a necessary alteration to our set way of living and thinking in order to have a healthier and more peaceful life. All of us are called to hold a life of spiritual and physical alignment, but that can only exist when the actions we dedicate our time to don't just afford us moments of relief and escapism or semblances of fulfillment, but in themselves, they bring about and embody comfort and purpose, even amidst challenges. It's less difficult to search and realize where it is that we don't belong from an occupational standpoint, because we can measure how our motivation changes over time and ultimately what it's linked to. But when it comes to the lifestyle that we've adopted, specifically how we carry ourselves and what we decide to engage in, becoming aware of their contribution to our state of being is much more timely and indirect, because it also concerns the condition of our spirits, which is something many of us aren't aware of or don't acknowledge. For our discussion, we'll refer to spirit as the force of direction that guides our desires and the foundation upon which we align our decision making. Quite literally, it's the deepest part of the essence which constructs us as individuals, and its profoundly integral function in who we are is what makes it so difficult to transparently critique firsthand. Put simply, it's hard to evaluate ourselves objectively when our perspective is naturally inclined towards the subjectivity of our personal experience. So when it's necessary for us to confront the missteps in our life choices where they exist, it's our natural reaction to translate the blame and disappointment we feel onto the association or influence that contributed to our misdirection, even though no one else has control or responsibility over the decisions that we make. Yet, even when we realize that our lifestyle should no longer be acceptable, whether that's for health, productivity, moral, or any other reason, it's still very difficult to make adjustment where it's needed, because changing what we've ingrained in our spirit isn't just fundamentally difficult, it's uncomfortable. It's also painful to admit defeat, and that who we currently are isn't enough to reach or hold any lasting contentment in our lives. It hurts, and that hurt is much easier to get lost in than to see past. But for us to make it through that and begin our growth in the right direction, we have to challenge ourselves to step outside of our emotional experiences amidst the ownership and admission of our shortcoming, and recognize that there's tremendous perseverance and resolve to be found through that. So how do we admit that we're defeated without letting that break us down completely? It can be so challenging to let go of what we've made habitual, that many times it isn't until we've reached an all-time lowest point that we begin to fully commit ourselves to change with all of our effort. But we don't have to wait until all of our vibrance is depleted, or we've hit rock bottom, in order to become more than what we are. If we can be completely straightforward with ourselves and take full responsibility for who we've become, we can go beyond just acknowledging our weaknesses and start to diminish the influence they possess over us. But I have to be honest, that's much easier said than done. Once we're able to clearly transcribe our faults, And for more context in our discussion, those faults can be, but aren't limited to, laziness, animosity, substance dependence or addiction in drugs and alcohol, uncontrollable lust and sexual appetite, and obsession with materiality. These things, in which we've built a psychological dependence and spiritual fixation upon, don't just root themselves in the shaping of our thoughts and perspectives, but in doing so, our correspondent decision-making encourages us to position our lives where these destructive habits can proliferate with or without our awareness. And in some cases, sadly but truly, their effects become permanent or unable to be fully reversed. The longer in life we take to admit our mistakes, the more our sense of normalcy degrades into fixation and dependence on temporary euphorias. And that's why it only feels scarier and more impossible to overcome ourselves as time goes on. Change doesn't take place the moment we realized it's a necessity to us. It's a process that involves us living with those weaknesses each day, confronting them mentally at every instance, and tapering away at them physically as much as we can every moment. Even when we stumble, and as many times as we stumble, we have to persist in conditioning ourselves towards purity from every moment onward. Inevitably, there will be times when it feels draining or timeless, and it won't always be clear if we're making progress, especially in those moments when temptation is at its highest or gets the better of us. But I promise, each of us has what it takes to persist through it all. Part of the reason we're all here is to realize that no matter how deep-rooted or long-lasting our flaws are, they aren't what defines us. With our humanity comes the inevitability of making mistakes, but what comes in hand with that is a boundless potential for improvement. We persist by knowing that who we are today doesn't account for all that we can be, and that our potential lies in how we can always reach beyond our current self towards growth. So when we've decided that we've had enough of who we currently are and where we're headed and want a better, healthier life for ourselves, it's no longer so complicated what we should do from there. We have to let go of everything that's been a deterrent and never turn back to them. When moments of temptation arise, we have to fight our minds and bodies with every fraction of our developing spirits. And if we ever stumble along the way, we can't hesitate to try again as soon as possible for as many times as it takes. Even the most challenging things that we'll ever face still remain as possibilities. So for everyone here at Mind Coast who's listening to this, know that wherever you are at this very moment, your story isn't finished. The simple, yet hard to understand truth is that our lowest point can just be our greatest lesson. Not nearly as many people who need to hear this do, but it's okay to accept our weaknesses as parts of our current identity, but parts that need to be discarded because they can only keep us from being everything that we're meant to be. Every one of us was created by God to learn what it means to be self-reliant, how to make decisions, and how to live rightly. So don't waste any more time than it takes for you to realize that. He's there and waiting with all the hope and strength you could ever crave. And on your way, we're all here to support you at Mind Coast. Thanks for listening, everyone. Feel welcome to join our community, and I hope we meet again. Peace.